Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for tuning in to Health Leaders, the place for peer sourced and solution focused insights for healthcare executives. My name is G. Hatfield, and I'm the CNO editor for Health Leaders. Today, we are speaking with Diane Sieg, who is a registered nurse, author, and the creator of the Wellbeing Coaching Initiative about nurse well-being and strategies for CNOs to implement that will improve nurse well-being. So, hi, Diane, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you, G. It's great to be here.
Of course. Yeah, it's great to meet you. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here. So I wanted to start at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and your career in nursing?
Sure. So I was in the ED. It used to be called ER when I was there for 23 years. And
Mhm.
I've been speaking, coaching, writing about well-being for the last 28 years. There's some overlap there. I'm not that old. There's some
Mhm.
overlap. I still worked in the ED when I worked as a speaker and author. And we used to call it stress management and then work-life balance. It's gone before the pandemic. We called it resilience, but since the pandemic, it's the same. It's the same topic. It's just now we're calling it. I'm calling the word well-being. It feels like it's a little bit more descriptive than
Mhm.
than the other terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit more all-encompassing, I think. Yeah. So, how would you, speaking of this, define well-being in the context of a healthcare workplace setting?
Really simple. I try to keep things really simple. We complicate everything. And
Hmm.
healthcare is complicated. So, well-being is how you feel about yourself and what you do
Hmm.
every day. That it's as simple as that. Of course, the things that affect our well-being are the complicated things, but
Absolutely.
it's really making the right decisions for ourselves every day. And nurses make decisions all day long. They triage all day long. They use critical thinking. They coach others. They teach others. They mentor others. But we
Mhm.
don't do a very good job of actually coaching ourselves and treating ourselves the way that we treat with everybody else.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always on the plane when they tell you to put your own mask on first. I feel like nurses are not doing that.
They know what to do.
Mhm.
They just don't do it for themselves. And
Mhm.
that's absolutely true.
Absolutely, yeah. So, what are some of the benefits of increasing nurse well-being for a health system? Obviously, there's nothing but benefits for nurses, but in terms of pitching a strategy to the C-suite, what are the benefits there?
So they're never ending, the benefits.
Hmm.
If you have nurses that feel good about themselves and what they do every day, they're more engaged, they're less stressed, they're less burned out. They have more energy, and nurses are very creative. We know
Hmm.
this. We are very innovative. We think a little differently than other people, and we process things very quickly, and we give and give and give. So you have nurses who are more connected, more engaged, more energized around their work and in their life, which is what well-being will do for us. Then we
Hmm.
are unstoppable, and can be amazing and do amazing things. I mean, there's nothing that's not possible, and I've been able to, of course, witness this in the last 28 years, but especially in the last four since the Wellbeing Coaching Initiative, which I know we're going to talk about. So it's everybody wins because if
Hmm.
I take care of myself, if I prioritize myself and practice what I call self leadership, which means I make the best decisions for myself. I don't call it resilience and I don't call it self care because those are so overused words. And I think we as nurses, yeah, 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 I know what that is. Well, you,
Hmm.
you might know what it is, or you might not know what it is, but you're not doing it. So it doesn't really matter because,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, we are great at telling other people what to do, but not actually looking in the mirror and giving the same advice to ourselves. And that's what self leadership does. How do we lead ourselves? How do we prioritize ourselves? How do we make ourselves most important? And everybody wins, the patients, our colleagues, our staff, the organization. The bottom line, everything we now know, it's proven to be very effective. And and guess what? Everybody feels better.
Hmm.
Everybody feels better about themselves and what they do every day. So I could talk about the benefits, for the next 3 days. Not only the quantitative, but what we now know specifically when we improve engagement and stress and burnout through an IRB study that we did um, during the pilot during COVID, we improve retention and we improve the bottom line.
Mhm,
Specific, 30% across the board and a $3 million savings in 1 year, which was what Health has reported in a recent J&J article that was written in November of last year. So we
mhm,
know it works. We know it works. It's not just a nice to have, and we'll do it when we have time and we have a little money in the budget. We know that it works. It's very effective quantitatively, but
mhm,
also it's the qualitative. It's I have gotten to witness these nurses just flourish and just blossom in their careers. They get promoted. They create new positions. They go back to school. They get so involved in projects because when you give yourself more, you have more to give. Now, we all know this,
yeah,
but don't integrate what we need to do to actually follow through on it. So it's the connection, right? To actually really embrace it here, not just to know it, not
mhm.
just to tell everybody else what to do about it, but to really embrace it here in our hearts and in our souls and make it really important.
Mhm. Absolutely. I feel like that's something that human beings in general should take to heart, because I personally have that same problem where I'm like, I know I should be doing these things, but
Of course. Of course.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So talk to me a little bit about the well-being coaching initiative. How did that come to be?
So this was in November of 20. I had a client who I've worked with in several projects, Health, and Maureen Swick was the CNE at that time. And
Mhm.
she approached me and asked if I wanted to, uh, I'd be interested in creating a well-being program for their nurses that focused on coaching. Now,
Mhm.
I've been speaking and training and coaching on this same topic for at the time 24 years, but I didn't have a formalized program. And I'd worked with Maureen at Nova and at AONL and HM Health in the past, and I said,
Mhm.
yes, I would be interested in doing that. And
Mhm.
they became a development partner, and I could not have asked for a more supportive and patient
Mhm.
and engaged partner because they just were all in from the beginning, and none of us knew what we were really getting into
Mhm.
and what it would take. The pilot that was to be 2 years was almost four because we made a lot of changes, made a lot of refinements. It was in the middle of COVID, so it was a
Mhm.
very challenging time for everyone in healthcare
Yeah.
to see who I still keep in touch with, these nurse coaches, to see this model, and it's a train the trainer model. So just briefly, what I go in and do is I go into organizations, train their nurses, top performers, high functioning, who have a passion for well-being, train them how to be coaches. And then they
Mhm.
coach other champions and other coaches within the organization. So
Mhm.
I empower the organization by giving or licensing this material so they don't need me to continue to go in and train and coach.
Mhm.
They can coach from the inside out, but I continue to give them the structure with all
Mhm.
the materials and the manual, and even more importantly, the support. Because
Mhm.
we as humans, you already mentioned it, we can do great in the beginning. Here it is February, and a lot of us, that whatever we decided we were going to do in the new year, it's already
Mhm.
gone. It's already
Yeah. Yeah.
It's already fell off of our radar, our scheduling, our attention. So we
Mhm.
need ongoing support. It isn't just the one and done. It's not about knowing what to do, as we said earlier. It's about actually doing it and making it important, and not only committing every day to do it, but recommitting, because life is busy and we get
Mhm.
distracted. And there's lots of competing demands. We all have them. We just have to decide what is most important. Everything's important, but
Mhm.
what is most important? And it's a perspective change, especially for nurses. And to your point, G, of course, can everybody benefit from self leadership? and well-being, absolutely.
Mhm.
Nurses in specifically, which of course I am one, and that's who I work with, we have to change our mind and give ourselves permission that
Yeah.
this is important,
Mhm.
and really connect that when we actually give ourselves more, we have more to give. And
Mhm.
it's the opposite of being selfish. What being selfish is just running ourselves ragged until we have nothing left and we're hanging by our fingernails, and we don't want to, until finally one day we don't want to get out of bed, and we don't know how much longer we can do what we're doing. Probably not very
Mhm.
much longer. It's not sustainable.
Mhm.
And this is, an age-old problem. This is not new, but
Mhm.
it hasn't improved any over the years. And finally, when we're at a crisis in staffing and recruitment and retention, and actually our younger generation that even wants to go into this profession, we have to do something. We have to do something different. And so my goal, my mission, is
Mhm.
to empower the nursing profession with impact to focus on their well-being, to focus on themselves. And it's the
Mhm.
opposite of being selfish because they have more to give when they do that.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned the younger generation. I'm 25, I'm part of Gen Z, and I feel
Right.
like such a big important thing for us is kind of doing that reframing of thinking about well-being as as a selfless thing rather than something selfish. Because I think there's a lot of shame there
Yes.
that people have to overcome. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Of course, and we need you. We need Gen Z. All of us are fading out in the boomers,
Mhm.
if they haven't already. And the millennials, they're great, but we have to continue with the succession plan, and
Mhm.
it's a good thing that Gen Z have a focus on work life balance and what they will and what they won't deal with and
Mhm.
cope with. It's because it benefits all of us, because we all need to focus on a well-being. That's the only way we're going to sustain, to be able to stay at the bedside, stay in this profession,
Mhm.
not because we have to, because we want to. That's the difference. And because this well-being, you feel good about yourself, you have more energy, you feel more connected,
Mhm.
you feel more engaged in your work and in your life. That's why everybody wins. And so it's, the benefits are countless. And from the study that you read, that, I mean, we've proven this. We have the data,
Yep.
but I also get to see it. I get to see the light bulb on, and these nurses continue to evolve and
Mhm.
really transform. And that's been the gift for me, and that's what keeps me going, because I know it works.
Mhm. Absolutely. So to kind of get into some of the nitty-gritty details a little bit, what are some of the concrete strategies that you would recommend CNOs implement to increase nurse well-being?
So it's really simple, not
Mhm.
easy, but really
Mhm.
simple. So the practices that I have categorized them that support self leadership, that supports well being, is CPR. Um,
Mhm.
and not the CPR that nurses are familiar with, but just as
Mhm.
life saving, because it infuses more energy, more engagement, more connection into your work and into your life. So the CPR stands for compassion, presence, and recovery. And so,
Mhm.
just quickly to explain that a little bit, compassion not for others. Nurses have plenty of compassion for others, but what we
Mhm.
don't have is compassion for ourselves.
Mhm.
So, giving yourself a break. Most of us have such these unrealistic expectations that we can never meet. And then when we don't meet them, we are harsh and critical and cruel, which doesn't help. And now
Mhm.
studies show us that this self-deprecation, this self-berating, this self-beating up, and that negative self-talk, it actually doesn't help us. It doesn't move us forward. It actually beats us down. And
Mhm.
it's also exhausting. So when I think of well-being, and I teach it and coach it, it's really a cultural thing. It's not the one and done. It's not, yeah, we're going to bring this eh, speaker in this week because we got a little money. It's a cultural change and switch. So it's
Mhm.
really about supporting each other and supporting ourselves. And as nurses, we haven't always been great at that in the
Mhm.
past. So it starts with, of course, it starts with leadership, as we talked about earlier. So
Mhm.
it's about the CNO, CNE role modeling this, that they are treating themselves with kindness and not having this negative self-talk and not having these unrealistic expectations and running themselves ragged. So just, it can be small things. What are you doing? What are you doing for yourself today? When we're kind, we're kind to ourselves, we're connected to ourselves. Not here, not the
Mhm.
critical thinking that we're all so great at, but really dropping into our hearts and remembering why we're here. Why are we
Mhm.
here? What are we doing every day? Unfortunately, this profession has gotten so task oriented, right? Check, 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 which is all here.
Mhm.
And from my perspective, well-being is not here. Well-being
Mhm.
is here. It's the true embodiment and integrating this into our daily lives is in our hearts and soul, not in our heads. So that's compassion. The second is presence, just being in the moment.
Mhm.
So much going on in our heads, and I'm an ED nurse, so I know what it means to be moving quickly and doing
Yeah.
all different things at the same time.
Mhm.
We have got to slow it down. Otherwise, we're busy, but we're never
Mhm.
here. We're never engaged. We're not engaged if we're busy. If we're busy, we're thinking about what we didn't do or all the
Mhm.
things we had to do, and we're never here. And that again, so exhausting to be on this treadmill and feeling like, and we all have moments like that. Healthcare is one thing we know, healthcare is change. So
Yes. Yeah.
lots of uncertainty, lots of chaos, but not all the time. It doesn't have to be. And what happens is, and I know you've heard this, since the pandemic, we're still at the command center. We feel like
Mhm.
we're still there and that everything is got to be quick and changing and rapid. And we don't even take a breath to
Mhm.
actually be in the moment. So, this idea of presence for yourself, to
Mhm.
know, to check in, to know when you're hungry, when you're grumpy, what you need. Again, focusing on yourself first and then being able to focus and give attention to everything else. So, it's sometimes we're just kind of cut off from we're here and we're cut off from the neck down,
Yeah.
even though we tell everybody else what to do, getting their basic needs met. We don't do it ourselves, and we just
Mhm.
keep going and going and going until something stops us, illness, injury. Just as said earlier, we just don't feel like we can get out of bed, or we wonder how much longer we can do this. And then the third is recovery,
Mhm.
which means how do we fill ourselves back up? How do we re-energize ourselves, not on your day off, not just on vacation, but every day, because we are giving. We have so many demands. That's what we do. We do it all day in our shift at the bedside with our teams, with our staff. And then we go home, we do the same thing. And so,
Mhm.
this idea of filling ourselves back up, doing things that help us feel good about ourselves, that bring us joy, not for hours, but it can be anything that can make you help you smile from the inside out
Mhm.
and help you feel good about yourself. Maybe it's a puzzle or reading for pleasure or drawing or coloring. It not for the end product. Even projects that you really enjoy and you do it just for you, not for somebody else.
Mhm.
It can be our pets, it can be anything, getting outside for fresh air, listening to music. So it's simple thing,
Mhm.
but the key is we have to prioritize ourselves to do them. And not all of them in the same day, but at least one of these practices, because it's making yourself important enough. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I'm really glad that you mentioned how CNOs and CNEs need to role model that behavior. Just because I think in a professional environment, you can hear people say like, "Well, make sure you take your day off, make sure you go rest," but unless your manager or your boss is doing it, you're not really going to think it's okay. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think
Absolutely.
that that's really
Messages.
important. Mhm.
That is what we've heard all of our careers, that those of us have been around a long time, and
Mhm.
I will tell you that high performers, high functioning, which of course is what we want everyone to be, a high performer, to the best. We want everyone to be their best, because if you're at your best, you feel your best.
Mhm.
But to do that, you have to actually maintain some of the well-being that we're talking about,
Mhm.
because it's not sustainable otherwise. Otherwise, you are, you burn yourself up, and it you have to go on and do something else. You can't stay in this profession that I really believe is a privilege and a calling, and it's special people that are attracted to this, but we're special, but we're not robots, and so we need to continue be be very mindful, very present to our own needs, so that we can continue to meet the needs of others.
Absolutely, yeah. So, we've touched on it a little bit, but in terms of ROI, what metrics should CNOs and other nurse leaders be using to measure well-being and kind of the success of their programs? Are there kind of or universal benchmarks to aim for?
Sure. And there's so many now. We have so many great measuring tools. I like to stay with, very standard and get and validated. I think validated assessments are always because then you know what the benchmark is.
Hmm.
But stress, PSS is a very simple stress scale. Uh, a burnout in Maslow's, and we used in our study, we used a portion of each of these, so it didn't get too lengthy. But
Hmm.
measuring, what's not measured, it can't be changed. So before, during, after, ongoing measurement, not just one, to see where the issues are.
Hmm.
So engagement, stress, burnout. Also, we measured self compassion, and
Hmm.
Kristen Neff has a great scale for that. And then lastly, with self leadership, because we want to understand where they start,
Hmm.
then where they are immediately after whatever the intervention was. In our case, it was the coaching, and then where are they 3 months later, and 6 months later, and 12 months later? Because what we're really talking about is an ongoing commitment, leadership commitment. But also an individual commitment, both. It's not either or, it's
Hmm.
both. It has to be supported by leadership, but it's also responsibility of the individual to follow through when there's a structure and support. And it doesn't have, I mean, there's many ways to create a structure and support, whether it's text messages or emails or flyers or different themes in the month, but it's an ongoing recognition and acknowledgement that you matter to us, and we
Hmm.
want you to practice self leadership. We want you to focus on your well-being, and we're going to support you in any way that we can. So it's not just one thing, it's many things. But and when I think about what CNOs can do now, today, it's acknowledging people, connecting,
Hmm.
not just how you doing and moving on,
Yeah.
but a real connection. It doesn't take that long. It can take less than 2 minutes to actually really connect with someone and hear them and know them, whatever size your
Hmm.
your organization is. But that connection, that engagement, to recognize, and I think one thing that's really important right now is transparency, because things are just changing so quickly. And often, nurses, especially at the bedside, they just feel so far away from the people up there making the decisions. And
Hmm.
so being as clear and transparent as possible about changes, about uncertainty, and sometimes all there is clear is uncertainty, but just
Hmm.
to call it what it is, because people make it up if
Hmm.
it's not called, and that's a very uncomfortable for anyone. But I think especially for nurses, we want to be clear, and then we go, then we can act, then we can do it, and we like to know what we're supposed to do. And so
Hmm.
clarity is, I have found, really important to nurses. And it's okay even if you don't know, but just say if you don't know, so that
Hmm.
we can be, at least pause and take an exhale, and not make it up what is really, the doomsday about what is happening and what is
Hmm.
down the pike in this constant state of change. And and the other thing, when you think about well-being, is people want to be heard.
Mhm.
They really want to be heard and understood. They want to feel safe. They want to feel recognized. They want to feel seen. The, I mean, these are all, we all know this, but in
Mhm.
this quick, fast pace, more, better, faster, doing less with more, or doing more with less. We know all this is important, but sometimes it gets a little bit lost in the chaos and the busyness
Mhm.
and change.
Mhm. Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned transparency as well, because I think, like you're saying, that honesty of just saying, like, "Well, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I can get one," that builds a lot of trust as well, which I think is also really key. Um
Absolutely. Great, another great role model, right? To trust,
Mhm.
because well-being, self-leadership requires us to trust ourselves.
Mhm.
To trust ourselves, to know ourselves, to forgive ourselves, to
Mhm.
trust that we know what our needs are, and then actually follow through and get it
Mhm.
met. So that's trust from the leadership, the senior leadership, all the way down to your direct manager, to your staff. So, my gosh, if you can't, I mean, look what patients do every day. They put
Mhm.
their trust in us. So we had to be able to trust each other. And if you ask nurses what the best experience of their work has been, they will say, often they will say, my team.
Mhm.
We had my, it certainly was for me in the ED.
Mhm.
People I worked with, that was the highlight. Because I always knew somebody had my back, and that is a real feeling of safety and security, and helped me grow and learn and get confident about not only my professional skills, but personally as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. So you mentioned this as well a little earlier too, but how can CNOs continue to supplement their well-being programs as time passes? Because as you said, it's like a New Year's resolution. You do it for 2 weeks and then it goes away. So how can they continue them?
Really good point, G. As I said earlier, commit and then
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the messaging is, this is what we're doing. It doesn't turn, we don't turn a switch and change it,
Hmm.
but it's an evolving thing, and it's consistent, because so often nurses are used to the one and done. Yeah, somebody comes in, yeah, we have a program, yeah, we tried that, didn't really work.
Hmm.
HM Health and my other clients know that this is a commitment. It's an ongoing commitment to their nurses, because their nurses are important. And if nurses are important, their well being is important, because no nurses, no patients. Limited
Hmm.
nurses, limited patients, and it just goes down the chain. Of course, limited revenue. So
Hmm.
it's ongoing, not perfect. No one's looking for perfection. Things go well some days or weeks or months, and then maybe not as well, but it's still the thread that keeps coming back, so that our nurses, that they feel acknowledged, appreciated, seen, heard, and and also participative, not just telling them what to do, because nurses do not like to be told what to do.
Hmm.
But that's the beauty of coaching, because they get to decide what is most important for them, and that's why shared governance is so powerful,
Hmm.
because nurses get a voice. They're there. They know what they're dealing with, every day, and no one else actually really understands that in the specific unit or the area or the organization, and so all those things contribute to being able
Hmm.
to sustain an ongoing. So whatever you start and initiate, I just would encourage nurse leaders to continue especially if it's working, especially if
Hmm.
it's effective and received well. And no matter what anybody says, no one likes change, even if it's change for the better. So
Hmm.
it's a process, which is why the structure and support, the ongoing structure and support, it's way more important than the information, the skills. We know what to do. Uh,
Hmm.
you said this more than once in this call, is we're just not doing it because we don't really know how to integrate it and how to fit it in, and what that means for us. And that's
Hmm.
what we have to decide, given a structure and support to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody just needs that extra encouragement to keep trying and keep at it. So,
And
yeah.
what I say, instead of trying,
Hmm.
we're practicing. We're
Hmm.
just all practicing. and we figure out what works for us and what doesn't work for us. I mean, there's no cookie cutter. You do these 5 things, you'll be good to go. It's
Mhm.
what is most meaningful for me and what's going to help me connect and engage and energize me in my life and in my work. And so I practice, and the process is one of learning and growing. It's like a PDSA model. We continue to learn and grow about ourselves, and that's the empowering part because we're never done, and that's
Mhm.
what we have to remember. We're never done. We are
Yep.
always evolving. Hopefully, we're always learning and growing, and that's why we got into nursing because it's not a routine. It's not the same thing every day.
Mhm.
As our work continues to evolve and grow, we have to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, that is a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Diane, for your time. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to get to know you and hear your insights. And thank you so much to everyone in our audience for listening. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here with you.